Hi guys, welcome back to Bloom TV. Today I am going to do my December 2014 reading wrap up, and I read a total of 15 books, 1 graphic novel and 1 novella, which I need to remember, in the month of December. So I had a really good reading month. To be honest, I did have, I think, a week and a half off, like in total in December, so you know, I had a lot of time to read, and like the previous week leading up to my holidays, I had a lot of like spare time, not really doing anything. So yeah, let's just get into the books. And the first book I read in December, I actually started in November, but I finished it I think on the 1st or 2nd, and it's Elizabeth is Missing by Emma Healy. This is an adult fiction novel about an old lady who has Alzheimer's, called Maud, I believe, and she is kind of in the kind of middle stages of Alzheimer's. She can still live on her own, but she doesn't have a living carer. She just has like a carer who visits her, I think, and like her daughter, her husband died some years before, and her daughter is still living in the area, so her daughter features quite prominently in this. And Maud is quite certain that there's a mystery going on about her friend Elizabeth, who she believes is missing. And there's also another mystery which took place in her childhood when she was a teen about her sister. And that's kind of all you really need to know, but it's two interlinking kind of timelines and stories, two mysteries, and it's just so excellent. I just really highly suggest it, just because of kind of the nature. It deals with Alzheimer's, I think, quite well. And I did enjoy it, but at the end of it I did only give it 3.5 stars because I didn't end up enjoying it. I think the way it tied the mystery up at the end was good, but it wasn't superb. Like, it wasn't really focused on the mystery, and it was more focused, I think, on kind of displaying her, like, Elizabeth, and kind of like how Alzheimer's affects her, and how it was kind of having an impact on her and her mind and her body. And I would highly suggest it for that, and I actually really enjoyed it, and I read it really quickly, which I wasn't sure I was going to. I also have some library books that I read this month, and the first one is The Darkest Minds by Alexandra Bracken. I always hate showing library books because like the shiny cover always like makes a horrible glare on the camera. This is a really popular YA kind of dystopian novel about kind of concentration camps, and it's about superpowers. And there's this young girl called Ruby who's at one of these kind of concentration camps in America, and children who developed, there's basically a virus which affected all children, and the children that survived from this virus developed superpowers, and then the different superpowers are categorized according to color, and you can do different things according to which colour you are. And you kind of follow Ruby having flashbacks to when she first came to the camps and was like developing it, and kind of her story, and then it starts off with her at the age of 16 at a concentration camp, and kind of it evolves from there, but there's a lot of other things that go on. And I really enjoyed this. I thought it was a really good concept. I thought it was really interesting. I thought it was done really well as well. I really liked Ruby as a character. I thought she was really brilliant, and I also liked some of the other like minor characters. They were all really good as well, and I thought it was just really good, and it took me like quite a long time to read it, but I really enjoyed it while I was reading it. It never kind of felt boring. There was always like something going on, so I gave that 4 stars. And I will hopefully gonna buy that book, and also buy the 2nd and 3rd book because it's the first in a trilogy. And then I wrapped up one of my favourite series this month, and I did that by reading Timeless by Gail Carriger, the 5th book in the Parasol Protectorate series. I know I keep saying there's gonna be a series review up for this, and there will be at some point, but basically this whole series, this is the final book, so I can't really give you a plot synopsis without spoiling you for the first 4 books, but this is a series kind of with an alternate universe, well, an alternate world with an alternate history, but it's kind of Victorian. It's set in Britain, in London, under the reign of Victoria I, or Queen Victoria, and there's kind of this, it's an alternate kind of society where there's werewolves and vampires and ghosts, but they're all known to society. They're just kind of, they're integrated into society and everyone knows about them, but it's just not everyone kind of is comfortable with it, but they are part of society, and they're part of the government, and there's like a separate area of the government which they kind of run and own. And the kind of main character is Alexia Tarabotti, and she is a spinster in this, well, she's 26 I think in the first novel, but by that standard, that in that like setting, it makes her a spinster. And she is a preternatural, which means which they are really rare, and it means when you touch like a supernatural creature like a werewolf or a vampire, they will turn like human and mortal, and she's really rare and she's so fabulous. I will go into like more reasons why I love this series when I eventually do a series review, but just know that it's a fantastic series, and this was an amazing conclusion. It takes place about 2 or 3 years after the events of the 4th book, which I wasn't expecting, but it was really nice, and it kind of gave that bittersweet tinge to the book, but it was such a great conclusion. And I just love all the characters in this series, and of course I gave this 5 stars. And the book I read after that is Robert Galbraith's The Cuckoo's Calling, i.e. J.K. Rowling. This is the first book in her kind of new, I think it's a crime series. I don't know how many books there's going to be, but I presume there's going to be quite a few, and there's only another second book out at the moment. And this one focuses on a mystery about a model who fell off her balcony, and everyone believed it was suicide at the time, but it basically follows this private investigator called Cormoran Strike, who is hired by the model's brother to investigate it because her brother believes it's been a murder, and that his sister was murdered. And I thought this was a really good book. The writing is really brilliant, and I will read anything J.K. Rowling writes. I think she's fabulous, and this really didn't disappoint me. I think the mystery was really well done, actually. It was a really like satisfying, and I thought it was really good. And I think the characters, what J.K. Rowling does so well is builds these amazing characters which feel so real and just feel so lifelike. I don't know how else to describe it other than that, but I really enjoyed this and I gave it 4 stars. And the book I read after that was something that I just wanted to fly through because I'd been reading some quite like long books that had been taking me like a couple of days to finish. I just wanted to I felt like I was kind of behind, so I was like, right, I need to read a really quick book. So I read Pushing the Limits by Katie McGarry. This is like the ugliest cover I've seen of this book. I mean, the American one isn't much better, but you've got to admit that's probably a hideous cover. Although my mum thinks it's really nice, and I was like, no. But anyway, this is a first in a kind of companion novel series, kind of Anna in the French Kiss style, but set in America, and this one focuses on 2 people. One's called Echo and one's called Noah, and it's told in dual perspective, and they both have kind of secret pasts, and Echo has kind of been shunned by her friend, most of her friendship group. She's only really got one close friend left in school because of something that happened to do with her mother. And Noah is kind of has this very tragic past, and he's kind of a bad boy, and it's so good. It really isn't insta-love, and I really loved reading about them. I thought they were really great characters, and this deals with some really important issues like mental health and family, and you don't have to have family biologically. Your family don't have to be biologically linked, and I just thought it was really great, and I really enjoyed it, and I gave it 4 stars. And I probably will continue on with the rest of the series, but I don't know, those UK covers, I really don't like them, so I might just continue reading it from the library because the American covers are kind of hard to get. But I don't know, I'll definitely be continuing on with it in some format though. And then the book I read after that was Teased by Amanda Maciel. Again, this didn't really take me long to read. I hope I said her last name right. And this was kind of a meh book for me. I think it's quite controversial in the fact that it deals with bullying and suicide, so those are kind of trigger warnings for you if you read this book. And also Pushing the Limits definitely has trigger warning for I don't know how to not really cutting, but self-harm possibly. I wouldn't want to say that it did, but it kind of has that feel to it, so I'm just giving you trigger warnings now, and a little warning just to be aware of those. But this book deals with suicide, and it's actually told from the perspective of the bully, and there's basically this girl committed suicide because a group of girls and boys at a high school had been bullying her, and it's kind of all about slut shaming, and I thought it dealt with slut shaming really brilliantly. you know, and I thought that was a really good aspect of it, but I just felt so meh about it. And I think with a book like this, you should feel so strongly towards it, that, and I just didn't. I just felt so meh the whole time I was reading it. I just wanted to be completed with it, and I know that sounds really bad, but I think, and it wasn't really the perspective of the character, because I thought that was a really, why I picked it up in the first place was because it was told from this perspective of the bully, but it just, something about it, I just didn't click with it, so I only gave it 3 stars, but even now I'm thinking about kind of giving it a 2-star rating. And the book I read after that is A Great and Terrible Beauty by Libba Bray, and this was a fantastic book. I've been wanting to read this for about 3 years, 3 or 4 years, possibly even longer, and it's basically a historical paranormal book, and it focuses on Gemma, who's our main character, and she lives in the Victorian era, and she grew up in India with her parents, and when her mother dies, that happens right at the beginning of the book, she is, in the prologue, she is sent to a boarding school in England, kind of like a finishing school, and it kind of, she slowly like becomes involved in this kind of like learning about magic, and she realises she can enter into this separate realm, and it's really great, and it's all about kind of, definitely has really strong feminist, not strong, but it does have feminist undertones, which I really enjoyed, and I really liked Gemma as a character, and I just thought this was such a great book, and I gave it 4 stars, kind of with the potential to be more. And I'm so annoyed, I was looking through someone's review of the 3rd book, just because it didn't say it had spoilers in, and then I spoiled myself, because, and I guess I shouldn't have been looking through a review of like the last book, but really you should say there's going to be spoilers for like in the title, and on Goodreads you can actually hide spoilers, and that just vexed me so much, but I will still be continuing on, although that kind of did kind of dampen my kind of want to carry on with the series, but hey ho, that rant over, but I did really enjoy this, and I'd really highly recommend it. I know a lot of people have read it already, so I feel like I'm really late to the bandwagon. But the next book is Attachments by Rainbow Rowell, and this is the first book I completed in the Xmas Booktubeathon. So I've actually already talked about this in my wrap-up video for that, so I won't really talk too much about it other than I really loved it, and it's set in an office in 1999, and it's kind of about emails, and it's just great, and it's like my 2nd favourite Rainbow Rowell book, and I gave it 4 stars. And the book I read next for that readathon was The Promise of Amazing by Robin Constantine. This is a YA contemporary book. Again, I've talked about this book in my wrap-up. Really felt meh about this. I gave it like 2 stars or 2.5 stars, just because I felt so disconnected from the characters, and it just felt so meh again, and I feel really bad saying that, but it just didn't really have anything that made me love it, so I just feel a bit ambiguous about this. But don't let that deter you. If you read the synopsis, and like, you could still like this. Again, with Tease, like, if you think it's for you, then I definitely read it. I'm not saying it's a bad book, it just personally wasn't for me. And then the next book I read in that readathon was such a good book, and it's The Girl of Fire and Thorns by Ray Carson. This is a gift from the lovely Luana. I know she might be watching. Hello! She got this to me through the Secret Santa that was run through by My Thousand Life and Times on Tumblr. I hope I'm getting her URL right. She's really lovely too, and this was Luana's gift for me. I was so grateful to her for getting to this for me, because I've been wanting to read this series for ages, and I've heard so many good things about it from loads of different people. And it's a YA fantasy series. Again, I've already talked about it in my wrap-up, so I won't go into too much detail, but it's basically set in a kind of Latino high fantasy world, and it's awesome. The main character is so good. I love Elisa, who's the main character. She's really feisty, and she has such a good character development throughout the novel, and this book is so refreshing. It's just so unusual to anything I'd read before, and I highly enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars, kind of verging on the 4.5, and I am so excited to carry on with the rest of the series, because that book made me feel all the feels. And the last book I read for the Xmas Booktubeathon was Saga Volume 1, because I really needed to catch up and read 4 books, like start and finish 4 books, and this was like a quick one that I know I could read really quickly. And this is my first, I know you guys are like, but how have you only just read Saga? I know, like, I've been meaning to read it for so long, and I finally bought it in foils this month, and it's so good. I really highly recommend this. Like, this was actually my first comic kind of graphic novel. I'm trying to find like a non-spoiler, non-gory, non-sexual like section of the artwork to show you, but as I said before in my Xmas booktubeathon wrap up, this is like highly mature, like it's rated M for content. Wait, there's an example of the artwork. It's so beautiful. It has these kind of really like gorgeous colours running throughout it. Yeah, it's really highly explicit and it is quite violent, but I would really highly recommend it. It's a sci-fi graphic novel. You probably all know what it's about by now, but it is fabulous. I'm really looking forward to carrying on with the rest of the series. And then the book I read after that is Born of Illusion by Terry Brown, and this is very similar to The Diviners. I'm just going to say it right now. It is basically set in 1920s New York, and it is about this girl Anna who assists her mother doing seances and kind of medium shows. They've come to New York and they're becoming quite a popular, kind of very wealthy act, and Anna is trying to hide the fact from her mother that she can actually kind of contact the spirits and truly does have supernatural powers, because her mum doesn't. And her mum claims that Anna is the illegitimate daughter of Harry Houdini, who is a famous escape artist in that time. And this is so good. I really enjoyed this. I kind of wasn't sure because I hadn't really heard anybody talk about this, but I really, really enjoyed this book, and I gave it 4 stars, and I just really loved it. I think Anna was a really great character, and I thought it was really unique, and I just really love that world. And if you enjoyed The Diviners, I'd highly suggest picking this up. And I really liked kind of the romance element as well, and there's also mystery and kind of intrigue in here, as well as that magic, and it was so good. And if you can pick up the hardback, do, because it has deckled edges, and I really love this cover. Although I'm not really sure if I'm going to be picking up the second book. Sorry, I ran out of space on my little shelf there, because I read the synopsis, and it's basically does that classic thing where there's like really loads of angst in a relationship that was like developed in the first book, and I'm just not really a fan of that in books, like the kind of having to go through the separation period, like, you know, like how it happened in New Moon. I don't know, I'm just not a fan of that, so I don't know how quickly I'll be picking up the second book, but I will definitely be picking it up at some point. And then a book that I read throughout the month was My True Love Gave to Me, and this is a collection of short stories that is edited in mainly by Stephanie Perkins, and this was so cute. This is a really lovely collection. I've also read another short story collection which had 3 in it. I read that last year, called Let It Snow, which is the other really popular one that a lot of people know and read or have read, and that contains stories by Maureen Johnson, Lauren Miracle and John Green, if I remember correctly. And I just love this one so much more. It's really brilliant. I think just because it has a more variety of authors. I'm trying to remember some of my favourites. I really liked Holly Black's, I liked Gail Forman's, I liked Kelly Link's. A lot of people seem to hate that. I really enjoyed it. I really liked Stephanie Perkins. I loved Rainbow Rowell's, and I loved Laini Taylor's and Kirsten White's as well. I'm just kind of trying to see what my favourites were, and I all really love them. But even the ones I didn't enjoy as much, like I only gave 3 stars, there weren't any that I hated, and I really enjoyed this. And if you can pick it up in this really beautiful like goldy leafy edition, I would highly recommend that. This is the UK one, by the way, and you can find it on Book Depository. And then the book I read after that was a book that my friend Alice sent me. We have a kind of thing where we exchange books that each of us have really loved, and then we annotate them because that's how cool we are. And she sent to me Girl Reading by Katie Ward. This is the most recent one she sent me, and this was so good. I put off reading this for a very long time because I just wasn't sure. It's not really anything I've ever read, and basically the premise is there's 7 stories in this. It is a collection of short stories, really, not a novel, about a girl reading. That is the basic premise, and it travels from the dawn of Renaissance painting in 14th century Italy to the future in 2060, I think, or around that time. And I've written a full review of this on Goodreads, and it'll also be on my blog, so I'm not really going to go into too much more detail because you can just read my review. But I did really enjoy this. I think the writing was superb. It took a bit to get used to it because there's no speech marks. It's kind of a Margaret Atwood Handmaid's Tale thing, but it was so good, and I just really enjoyed it. I think my favourite one was let me just check, they're all based on pieces of art as well that actually exist, and my favourite one was Angelica Kaufman's Portrait of a Lady 1775. That was so good, I really enjoyed that one. And I also found this really interesting because my dad, who studied art history, could tell me quite a bit about each painting, especially the Simone Martini one, which is Annunciation from 1333, because he actually studied that in depth at university, so he could tell me quite a lot about them, which was really interesting, and I felt like I learned stuff reading this, so I'd really recommend this. And I think I must have raved about it so much now my mum wants to read it, so yeah, I'd recommend this. And if you think you're not going to enjoy it, I would really suggest you at least try it, because it is good, and it felt really good to kind of branch out of my reading comfort zone. And then the penultimate book that I read this month is this weighty one, and it's The Bone Season by Samantha Shannon. I received this for Christmas from my mum, and I actually tried reading this a couple of months ago. I got it from the library. Just knocked myself out with it. I got this from the library a couple of months ago, and I read the first chapter and I just didn't really feel engaged in the story, and then I had to take it back and I just never ended up reading it. But I asked for it for Christmas because I've heard so many good things about it that I wanted to kind of try it again. And it was excellent. I really enjoyed this. I will be doing a separate review for this, actually after I film this video, so I'm not going to go into too much detail other than look out for my review. And it's kind of sci-fi, fantasy, set in the future, dystopian, not quite sure how to categorise it, alternate history, so many genres, and also it has a sequel coming out in January, so yeah, I gave this 4 stars. And then the last book I read this month was probably one of my favourites this year, and I'm kind of gutted that I filmed my top bits of 2014 kind of early, because this would have been on here if it hadn't, and it is Illusions of Fate by Kirsten White. Again, I'm actually going to film a review for this because I feel like I haven't heard many people talk about it, and I think that it should be, and that is really strange because it's like a flock or whatever of ravens, and this book deals so much with ravens. That was weird. You can't, I know you can't see them because they're like out the window, but that was just weird. This is a YA fantasy book, and it's a standalone fantasy, which is awesome. It's really short, it's under 300 pages, and it is one of the most beautiful books ever. That's what it has, like that under the dust jacket. Then this is a just gorgeous cover anyway, and then it has these like gorgeous illustrations at the top of each chapter, and I just love this book. Again, I'll go more into the synopsis, but I gave this a 4.5 stars on Goodreads. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed my December wrap up. I try not to make it too long because I'm trying to kind of make my videos more concise, but I can see this is up to over 20 minutes already, but I did read 17 books in total this month, so forgive me for that. But I hope you all have an absolutely lovely New Year's. It's New Year's today when I'm filming this, and I hope, obviously I'm going to be uploading this tomorrow, so it'll be the first day of 2015, which is crazy, and I hope you guys all have a wonderful start to 2015. I'll see you again for another video. Bye!